Hey everyone, welcome back to the Art2Life podcast. Super excited today to be answering questions. I can't believe that it's been about 5 or 6 weeks since I dove into the website, that little yellow tab. If you go to art2life.com, there's a little yellow tab there that says ask a question or leave a comment, and people have recorded questions and they kind of pile up. And I just thought I did this just the other day, but there was a ton there and some really good ones. And I think this is just kind of a cool thing. I'm going to try and do this every 4 or 5 weeks. So anyway, excited to dive into these questions. The first question is from Justin.
Hey, Nick, Justin here in Portland, Oregon. I appreciate all the questions you're fielding. It's so valuable. I have a mental block and I'm trying to figure out how to get through it. The mental block is I don't use enough paint. I'm worried about wasting paint. And I know you've talked about this before, but I cannot seem to convince myself to go ahead and use as much paint as necessary because the paint I'm using is high quality and I don't really have the funds to invest in larger tubs of it. So I can use different brands, but the real issue is just simply mixing enough paint, just trying to get to the point where I am willing to use more than is necessary and put enough on the canvas.
So Justin, I see this a lot actually, and it's not a dumb question, and it's a thing that a lot of people struggle with, and I'm sure there's some folks listening here who have struggled with it. So I get it. It's a resource. It's expensive. I'm imagining that you're using acrylic paint. Okay. And so acrylic paint, the paint you buy at the store, the really good art paint, is expensive, but you can get inexpensive paint, gallons of latex paint, and you can mix acrylic with other latex paints. Like it's all water based. And, I don't know, I imagine you're in the US, from your accent here, and you're probably familiar with Home Depot. A lot of these paint stores, Home Depot, they have a shelf, like a stand. If you just go check it out, every Home Depot's got it, where it's called the Oops shelf. And basically, when people come in and they order 5 gallons for their bedroom and it's off-white and what can happen is the store mixes it wrong, or they don't pick up the order, or the color's not quite right, and they can't sell it. And because it's been painted, and there's weird colors. You can find like weird green colors. You just look at this shelf. They don't know what to do with it. They're going to recycle it, but it just piles up. They will sell those gallons. I've bought them for $1 a gallon. They have no value. Once the person doesn't want them, or they've made a mistake, they have to remix the paint. And then what are they going to do? Sell off white paint to somebody? So, dude, you can have so much paint for so cheap. Now, you're not going to get the cadmium red color. Even if you bought a red house paint, you won't get that brilliance in the art store from that art store paint, but you don't need that. You only need like small accents of that in your painting, right? Like most of it can be really off whites and grays, and most of the paint on a painting isn't pure, highly saturated art store paint quality colors. So that's the solution right there. I get it that there might be a piece in this also that you're not really being luxurious with yourself, that you're not giving yourself the $3 worth of paint and you're only giving yourself 79 cents worth of paint. And that can affect the painting, right? That kind of miserly quality. It's like mix up more. And I just encourage you, you want to be heading towards abundance. So get more paint. You can extend paint with some of the gel mediums. That's another way to do it. You can use anything to color. If you use acrylic and use gloss medium, you can mix up charcoal and use that as paint. I mean, you can do tons of things that make marks on a picture. Don't feel you're relegated to just those really expensive bottles in the store. Get them, but just use them for those accents. All right. The next question here is from Carol.
Hi, Nick. It's Carol up in Rockport, Maine. I found myself lately reverting to my old way of painting very stiff representational work. Mostly, I think, because I have been gearing up for some juried summer exhibits. So this has kept me from going to my studio as regularly. After listening to your podcast last week, I decided to just paint over my 24 by 24 attempt, and I feel much better. Do you have any other tips on preparing for juried exhibits?
Okay, great. And there's another question in here you'll hear that has to do about this juried exhibit. And it's interesting, Carol, that I hear you saying you're stiffening up and you're painting some figures that you're kind of not that into, because you got this juried exhibit coming up. And I just want to remind you, and it's so fine, right? Like, you've got a vision of what this thing has to be and the people that are at the receiving end of it. Maybe there's an expectation. It sounds like there's an expectation of this gallery that the work's got to look a certain way. But here's what I know. When people feel free to be themselves, the more free you can feel, the better the work will turn out. The easier it'll be to make, the more different it'll be, the more personal it'll be. That's a home run. And I'm not saying you've got to abandon everything, but the fact that you covered up something is a real tell for me, because you said it felt great. I think what's happening here, so your soul doesn't care about an exhibition. It just knows what it wants you to make. And the fact that you kind of covered up one of these figures that felt kind of stiff and it felt good is a real good clue. Like, you might be transitioning into something that's more like you. So try to do those figures if you're stuck in doing them. But like, this is the thing, art isn't, it doesn't want to be a job. Like, it's art. You get so much freedom with it. The work will be better. Your work that's going to come now, once you let go of this, anytime it's starting to feel constricted and this old work and thing, it's like, man, make this show about the new work. Take those figures and paint on top of them and talk about how I was doing this show and it was these figures and I felt really stiff. And then I just cut loose and here's what I made and I'm super excited about it. That sounds juicy and exciting to me. So that would be my advice on it. Anytime you have an expectation, someone's waiting for something, there's this tendency to worry about what they're going to think about it. But you got to double down on like not caring at all, because ultimately the best work you can make is when you're free. So if you got 10 pieces for the show, I'd recommend doing 20. Do 30. Really go for it. And out of that, let them pick them. But you need to feel free in this process. Okay, the next question is from Angelique.
I have a question about batting average. I've been working a lot on small pieces. I go back and forth between big pieces, small pieces. But right now I'm having to make a lot of small pieces for an art fair. It's really tough to, I guess, keep my standard a high quality that I really want to do and produce the amount of work that I need to produce in the time that I have to produce it. Just wondering if you have any tips about when do you call it? When do you say it's good enough?
Okay, that's great, right? Batting averages. What a great idea. I played around with this, batting averages, and I think it's a cool exercise to do. And I was doing it because I had another job at the time, and I was painting, and then I was also working at this other jobby job, and I wondered, like, how do you figure this out? If I make 10 paintings, generally I would sell some of them, and then I would make this much money, and I would work backwards and figure out, well, and I kind of figured out my batting average. And I know her question is just around finishing, but mine was around selling, like how many would I sell? And at the time, I think I would sell like 6 out of 10. So I would calculate, I keep track of how long it took me to make these paintings, all 10 of them. And then I could calculate how much I would make from selling 6 of them. And I'd figure out how much I made an hour. And it was way more. It wasn't amazing, but it was way more than that job I had. So I promptly quit. But it was a great to look at, what's my time worth, But so what the question really is around batting averages, around finishing. A good way to think about this is you're just in this process and you're just making a lot of work. And generally, the quicker you kind of go and rolling into these and doing another one and doing another one, you're probably going to have a higher incidence of really good ones, right? There is a quantity thing here that you can leverage where you're just, if you're in a flow and you're making one and then you do another one and then you go quick and do another one, not all are going to be amazing, but you're probably going to have more that are amazing than if you obsess on 1 or 2 because you get so tight with that, right? Again, this same idea of feeling free, it sounds like you're on a good roll and you're trying to produce all this stuff and you're probably holding the bar pretty high for yourself. So I would line up the ones, let's say you've done 20 and 5 of them are amazing. Line those up and look and learn from what you're doing with the ones that are really resonating. I really kind of doubt it has anything to do with time, by the way. It doesn't mean your work isn't great because you spent more time on it. Your work's great because it's balanced and it feels like you and there's something happening in it. And that can happen really quick. And it can take a long time. You can struggle with it, but it's not, if you spend more time, it's going to be better. So that's pretty interesting, but you need to stay in this flow and you can learn from the good ones that you're making and get them close and then let go of it. You don't have to kill yourself. You don't have to, your bar. Now, I understand what you're up against. You want to have 50 things done by a certain date. Give yourself a break. And, if 10 of them are amazing to you and 25 are pretty good and there's a few you're not even so sure about, just go for it. Here's what's going to happen. The things that you think are amazing, once you put them out there, aren't necessarily the ones that everyone else will think are. I have sold so many pieces from, doing an open studio and somebody comes in and this always happens, by the way, there's something in the corner that's just, you don't even want people to see. They go over there, they look at it. Is this available? And you're like, are you kidding? I would just throw that in the dumpster. And I've sold these things. People we don't need to worry about it so much. Get a good process going, providing you're learning and you're excited and you're growing and a bunch of them are really good and you're fired up to make the next one. It's a win, man. Just try it. See what happens when you have some work that's a little less finished. I've found more and more that I'm more comfortable with letting my work feel a little less finished because it's sort of tiring seeing me just finessing everything. Just see what it feels like as an experiment. Finesse the ones, micromanage those ones, get them perfect, but then leave some ones that are a little off. That's okay, right? It's all serving you and your sort of journey of what you're doing. So that's how I would approach it, because it sounds kind of like homework when you got to do 20 perfect ones. It just doesn't sound fun. I would just enjoy it, enjoy the ones that come easy, and just celebrate it. It's really awesome. Next question is from Carrie.
I was in CVP 2020. I have a very exciting opportunity in 2024. I've got 4 walls to fill, and I've already picked out 12 canvases and the sizes. And what I'm wondering is, do you have any advice for me as I create this body of work? Any thoughts on color palettes? Any thoughts on composition? How to pace myself? I would just love to hear your thoughts.
Well, first of all, congratulations, Carrie. That's awesome. So what's worked for me, again, this relates to how, if I feel free and not worried, I do better. I do better in my life. I do better all the way around. And so how do you set that up? I'm not afraid of working hard, but I don't want the stress. So you've got this date coming up, and I've got a show for next year also. And so I would start early. You've chosen the canvases I would get extras. I would do more. If you got those 4 walls, pretend you have 6 walls. Like, it's not painful to make more work. It's liberating. And then you're going to feel more free on those, and they're going to turn out better. Because if you only need 10 and you make 15, you're going to feel like, you're not going to be as precious with those. So that's how I approach it. I do this with commissions. I always make 2 or 3, because if I'm free, if I feel good, making the things are not hard to do. It's just more my psychological state. And in terms of compositions and color, I can't say what would be good for you, but if you were in my studio right now, or I was in your studio, I'd say, well, what have you made last year that you love? What are you so excited about? What one thing? What was it? I know you've got those pieces, Carrie. They're in your studio somewhere, even a part of a picture. Those are the breadcrumbs. Those are the clues that you want to look at, because that's what you love. And so now you're going to get to go in a deeper dive. If you're feeling kind of like, wow, I'm just sick of all my things. Well, that's another opportunity. That's great information to know. So now, well, how can you do something that's really wildly different? So for me, I might want to make something with yarn, and I never do that if I was bored with my work, So it really depends on where you are. But I'm a great believer in paying attention to where you just came from, and look back there and walk back there and pick through some of the things you loved last year. And don't make the same thing, obviously, but write down what it is about those pictures that you made, those 3 amazing pictures. Is it the color? Is it the looseness? Did they come easy? Did they come hard? And then start there. That's where the juice is. You need to go where the energy is for you, always, right? And if you feel free and you feel alive, that's what's going to do it. That's the recipe right there. That's what makes amazing art. And that's what you're after. You want this work when people come in to just go, wow, man, like, you just had a ton of fun here. This is incredible what you did. That's the outcome we're after. But you can't game it. You can't, be doing something because somebody said, hey, blue is the color of the season. I actually just saw that in a paint store. There's a 2023 paint colors, and these are the 12 colors. And I took a photograph of it, and I just thought, this is so ridiculous. But, I don't know, someone decides those colors, but I wouldn't do that. This is a personal thing based on what lights you up. Okay, the next question is Lucy.
This is Lucy from Oxfordshire in the UK. I wondered if you ever use water whilst you're painting with acrylics. I've watched a lot of your videos online, and it looks like when you're painting, you usually wipe your brushes off on blue roll as you're using them, and that you have like an array of brushes.
Okay, about the water and the acrylic. So I don't. You notice that I teach with acrylic. I use acrylic a lot, and one of the challenges with acrylic that I struggle with is that it's very thin. Acrylic is really thin, meaning you put some on a board and it's sort of transparent. Notice you have to put like 3 coats down to get that color. Like if you use white, it takes a few times to build it up, which is kind of frustrating. It's just kind of thin compared to oil, which is you can have a little bit more body to it and cover better. So I don't add water. I try to avoid adding water because I'm wanting to get that paint to feel thick and opaque. So lots of times we dip our brushes in water and then we mix something up, but then the paint gets really thinned out. So you'll see me, I'll dry the brush off. So the paint and, the Art2Life paint is a certain consistency. It's just really creamy, and it's not super transparent. It's not it's not very liquidy. It's just really like almost like, I don't know, pancake batter or something. But it's smooth. Why? Because I want to put it on the work, and I want the work to change. So if I have an area that's a certain color, and then I come in with another color, and they feel more potent because that color really feels like itself because it's thick and it's green and it's solid, then the work, it has more impact. There's more of a contrast. There's a bigger difference there. The opposite of that is using glazes. So I will mix up acrylic with water, and that's a glaze. And then I will totally put that on the painting. I'll wipe that on. But then I'll come back in with thick paint again. I'll use thick paint and thin paint. So on the final painting will be areas of thin paint, watery paint, thin, transparent, and then thick paint that you can, those are differences, and they look really good together, thick and thin. If you look at the Monet water lily paintings, there's thick paint on there and glazed areas, and it's that the differences between opacity and transparency all over your work makes it really, really rich. So now if I wanted to use really watery acrylic, I would probably do watercolor, because I think that paint's especially beautiful, and it's set up for water. So I just use, I feel like I'm using acrylic. You can use it transparently for sure, but it always feels just kind of weak to me. So that's why I don't so much. Okay. Next question is from Kate.
I don't know if you've ever talked about how you finish a painting in terms of any kind of a varnish or a cold wax, or does it change with all your different paintings? I'm using a lot of different media now, and one thing I love is beeswax, and I'm wondering if I am relegated to using cold wax to kind of finish that off, or does it need anything? How permanent is that? I also have a question about Caran d'Ache Neocolor 2s, how permanent those colors are.
Okay, Kate. So about finishing, all the acrylic paintings I finish with gloss medium. Now there's gloss gels and all that. You can squeegee things on. I tend to use gloss medium as a good finish, and then I will use cold wax on top of that. And Dorland's is what I use. I'll rub that on there and let that set up, and then I'll kind of polish it. So that's one way I finish acrylic paintings. The other way is I will use, I think it's still called self-leveling gel. It's a golden product. But you could use gel gloss with a squeegee, or self-leveling gel where you kind of pour it on, it gets really thick. Golden makes all these products, and they're completely, they all can work together. But basically, I don't want my pictures to be really, really shiny. And that's what like these gloss mediums and gloss gels and stuff do. So I will take that final coat, and if it's ending up in gloss, and I'll use wax on top of it, and I just rub that on there, and so it makes it less shiny. And then I can let that wax dry, that cold wax, and then I can just polish it, and it kind of looks kind of like a beach stone. That's a nice finish. Now in oil paint, instead of gloss medium, I use liquid, and I just wipe liquid all over the painting when it's dry, and it kind of creates a shiny surface. And then I use cold wax on top of that. I just wipe it on there, and I let it set up, and then I just kind of polish it, and it kind of gives it a nice sultry kind of beach stone finish. So now about the Caran d'Ache, I don't know about that at all. The fugitive, if it's in the sun. I mean, I've never really had any problem with permanence. I mean, maybe I just haven't lived long enough, right? I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't put my paintings in the sun. I think things would fade. I mean, I've seen old photographs, those fade. But, the fact that the pigment is in that wax, and if you're not putting the painting in the sun, wouldn't worry about it. I mean, I don't think it's going to be fading anytime soon. So, but again, I'm not like an archivalist person. I don't totally know the lifespan of that, but wax is incredibly stable, and having pigment in it and providing that's away from the sun, I think it's going to be fine. So, okay, next question coming up from Kathy.
I have been struggling with this for a really long time, and I do paint all over the place. And I have made many lists of what do I think I paint for. In fact, I use the tagline of capturing quiet moments. Not sure that really is representative of my work. How do I find a cohesion to what I think and therefore what is in my work? Are there methods you can suggest to gain clarity on a brand of your work? It's hard to see the forest in the trees.
Wow, it's such a good question, right? And you can hear, in Kathy's voice, it's hard, like it's hard when you feel like you're not sure where you are, and I feel that in the question, and this is one of the questions, that episode I did around branding, and I'm going to do more on this because I think it's something that I was just teaching at an offsite, and it was all about this, getting connected to the essence of who you are and how to express that and how important that is. So there's a lot here to kind of touch on, but I just have to say that you're never far from yourself. You haven't lost your way. And the answer, if you were in a workshop with me, you would just basically remember something that you need to remember about, what's exciting for you. And again, I think you have to look at the work you've been making, grade it if you want. Look at that work. Look at those last 20 things, what you made this year. Imagine if you were showing someone, which one would you hang up? And you can start there. You don't need to know. The doing of the thing is how you figure it out. You don't get to figure out ahead of time, like, well, now the more I think about it, I think I'm a person who does pictures about this. I mean, I know this because this is what I used to do. I used to think it was connected to the materials I was using. Oh, well, I'm a watercolor artist, just like Winslow Homer, or I do oil paintings, loose oil paintings, landscapes. I'm kind of like Sargent, or whatever. And I tried all these materials. I spent a fortune on art materials. Literally, I'd get so excited. I'd be like, okay, these Rapidograph pens, the 24 set is going to change my life, and I'm going to become this amazing artist because of this material. It had nothing to do with that. But so it's just about choosing something. And if you got 6 things that you've done last year that you're kind of into, just choose one. But just spend some time on it. Just look at that. Okay, what do I love about this? Now I'm going to do another one. And then I can look, I have 2 now to look at. It's like, well, what is this? How is this one better or worse? Or what did I like about the first one? If the second one isn't as interesting to you, why not? That's going to clarify what you like about the first one. Then do a third one. And then you have 3 to look at. You've got to invest in this. You've got to it's a process of you doing the thing that is going to help you figure out the thing. That's how you figure it out. You don't get to figure it out without doing it. You work in a way on these, and you don't have to jump around trying things. Just choose one thing. Choose one thing that it has to be something that you like, right? Maybe you have 6 things or 10 things. Just choose one. You can come back to the other 9 later, but just stay in one lane for a while and just go a little deeper. Your body will give you the information. You'll feel when it feels good. It's just about listening to what resonates for you. And generally speaking, when you start chasing something that has got some energy about it that you like, the work gets better automatically, and people notice it. And yes, people will want it and they'll say, oh my God, wow, I love what you're doing now. All that starts to happen. But it only happens because you've got energy for it and you're moving towards something that's a yes for you. Your whole inquiry, your challenge here, I want you to reframe this. This is the coolest thing. This is like to have this chance in your life to do this, but do it in a way that's like, just come with openness and curiosity. Like, maybe I don't know, I don't know. I'm just going to play in this, it's a playful, creative, curious journey, right? You don't have to know where you're going to end up right now. Pay attention to how it feels when you're doing it, and that'll give you the clues as to whether you're on the right track or not. So I know that's a lot of different angles, but you feeling free and less anxious, you're already home. You already know it. It's sitting right there. It's right in plain sight. You've already got that work you've been doing. Some of it you don't like. You tried some things. It was like, no, you tried this, you tried that. It's not about hopping around doing different things. It's going deeper there's clues on even a part of a work that you like. Go deeper on that. It's your journey. There's nobody can teach you this, but you get to figure it out because of all your trials and errors and your missteps. And gradually, you kind of come in closer and closer and closer until you really start tracking it. And that's when it gets really fun, because the work gets more consistent, because it's not consistent because you're gaming it. It's consistent because you know what you want to do. You're enjoying it. You don't want to do another thing. So I would just start focusing a little bit on one aspect of what you're doing and dive into that more and enjoy it. Next question's from Patty.
I was just saying my word for the day is discovery, because I'm in this process right now. And I'm just really excited to start the Academy tomorrow. And I will be listening to this podcast again, when I can take more of it in. So thanks for everything.
So it's great, right? Like, and relates to Kathy's question, using a word like that, like if that's the vibe, if this is what, discovery, if that's, what Patty's kind of framing her time right now is that, well, that might encourage you to take more chances, because after all, this is the year of discovery, So checking in with what feels good for you and giving it some words, put those words up in your studio, talk about it. Well, this is when I feel more free this year, or I want to be like, I want more color in my work. I'm going to just play with color. If you're connected to that, you'll do it. You'll bring, that's sort of your charter. You bringing that into it. So that was sort of serendipity that Patty's comment came in right after Kathy's. Okay, this next question's from Martha.
Hi, Nick. I was curious if you have any tips or advice on how to transfer your feelings into your art. Also, how to find who you are as an artist and as a person. I have been struggling for a couple years and been just really stuck with my art making because I will start a painting or I will start a sculpture and I can't seem to figure out what I'm doing, if that makes sense. I don't know how to translate if I'm, feeling frustrated or if I'm going through some emotional roller coasters in life and transfer those feelings into my art. So I was just curious if you have any tips that might be able to help me with this.
Okay, so it's kind of related. Great question. Imagine if we said, I don't know how to laugh. Everybody else can laugh, everybody else can laugh, but I don't know, I don't really like when I'm not so sure, like I can do this and my laughs. And it's like, we're talking about creativity here. And the reason I'm relating it to laughing is that nobody questions the fact that they think they can laugh or not. It's built in. So just trust me with this, that we all are hardwired to be creative. We got tons of this. We're all unique. Our personalities kind of set in a way where, I mean, we're constantly changing, but after the age of 7, we're kind of like got the way we're approaching the world, and we have different challenges, and we have things that are easy and things that are hard, and our what feels like natural abilities and other things that are not, and all of those kind of come into this. But this is what you use for your art. You remember what it felt like, in summer when you were 7 years old and you were, going into the general store in bare feet carrying an inner tube, and it was super, super hot and the cement was hot. And you remember that time when, all the, when your first love, your difficulty at school, when you were bullied, or when you got that present, that that skateboard, or whatever the things, all the things that have happened to you make you who you are. And everyone's had different experiences, and everyone's utterly, totally unique. This is what we've been given. You get to make art from this place, and it's your place. There's not a chance that I could make work like Martha. No way. But all we can encourage each other to do is to double down on what our experiences are and what our feelings are, and to listen, to try to discern what it is inside of us that is important, that we don't necessarily say anything, but it's what feels right to us, what feels a yes. I do a thing in all my classes where I hold up two colors, or two objects, a stapler and a lollipop. And it's like, or a stapler and an iPhone. And which one, with, you 100 people listening, which do you prefer? And I'm on a Zoom call, and A or B. And, it's like A, B, B, A, B, B, B. And it's completely arbitrary, but people know what they like. They like the phone, or they like the stapler. There's absolutely no reason, there's no logical reason why people like something over another, but they know. You just completely accept it, right? And so it's not right or wrong. It's just, I like orange more than green this week. If I held up yellow and I held up green, and everyone who was listening, you would choose, it'd probably be, 60% green, 40% yellow. I don't know. But the answer. It's because your soul just says, yes, I like that. Intuitively, I like that. That's what art making is. And yes, you need to learn color, and you need to learn some material. And that's what, we teach that. I can teach anybody how to do all the academic things in art. That's not the hard part. It's actually not the interesting part. The cool part is, when you make decisions, you discern what you like and what you don't like, and you keep doing that. When you make a picture, when you make a painting or a piece of art, you're saying yes, no a bajillion times. And what's so amazing about this, think of all those little decisions, yellow, blue, big, small, green, you go crazy, all those decisions that you say, that leads you in a certain place, and you end up with a painting after 50,000 yes, no's. And then you do another one, completely different size, maybe different palette, and you say yes, no a million times again. And you do it again on another painting. And what's so crazy is that if you make enough pictures, enough objects, enough sculptures, whatever, that there's a pattern to your yes, no's. And we can see it. It's crazy. Someone who's just starting out, if they do 5 pictures, they come to one of my workshops and they do 5 pictures, and they're answering what interests them. They're pulling the choices, not because someone else likes it, but because they're saying yes, no to what they like. There's a feeling to the work right away from the beginning. It's your signature. Everyone's totally different, but because you're you, it's repeatable, sort of. The work will look different, but there will be a similarity. There'll be a style to it. There'll be a Nick quality to it. Whether I make a sculpture, whether I make a painting, and I don't even know how to put words on it, but people can recognize it. I know many of you have had that experience where people say, "Oh my God, I knew it was yours. I saw your thing, and I mean, it was a little different, but that was yours, wasn't it?" Because there's this feeling it's a pattern of your decisions. So how do you get this? How do you figure this out? You have to make a lot of decisions. You have to make your own decisions. You have to sense what feels yes and no. Just imagine you were playing and you're just making stuff up and you're saying, do I feel like doing this now or that? Well, I'm going to do that. That sequence, get good at that, get comfortable with that. It'll clarify. I mean, the art making thing is just this huge sort of testimony to yourself. It allows you to have a reflection of yourself. That's what's so cool about this. So Martha, you're actually saying, and I'm not even sure what I'm about actually as a human being, well, this is what's so cool about art. It lets us figure that out. And we get an artifact of that process of figuring it out by making decisions. And that's just a wonderful thing. And then people can reflect back to us what they see. So it's actually a perfect thing to use to figure yourself out. I always say art making is the process of becoming yourself. And the more clear you can get about yourself, the better the work gets, the more interesting it gets, the more valuable it becomes, because it's not like anybody else. And everybody is walking around the planet wanting to feel more alive, to feel something that they haven't before, right? Like, how you get so tired of yourself because your own work, and then you see somebody else's work and you're like, God, I just love that person's work because I would never do it, but I would love to be that person for a day because I am sick of what I'm doing over here. It's that kind of thing, right? That's what creates amazing. That creates the draw for work. When it's more personal, when it gets more like you, when you're paying more attention, and the longer you make art, the better you get at making good decisions about what feels right for you. I mean, it's crazy. That's what does it. That's what makes amazing art. And sometimes we second guess ourselves, right? I don't know. Maybe, what do you think? Should I do this? That's a hard place to be. And we have to do that a lot in our life. We got to rely on experts. But in art making, it's training ourselves to rely on ourselves and to share with the world our process of becoming more and more aware of what lights us up. It's kind of cool. All right. The next question here is from Joe.
Hi, Nicholas. It's Joe from Australia. I've got a query about using oil paint on unfinished linen. I'm interested in painting, onto natural linen without any primer on it. I like staining canvas and paper. So I'm just wondering how that will go. I understand that it breaks down the fibre of the linen. And I'm wondering if you know anything about that and how long that might take to happen. Also wondering if you can coat the back of the canvas when you're done, of the linen when you're finished, to somehow seal it up. Anyway, wondering if you have any experience with that.
Not really, Joe. I don't know. I'm not like an archivalist. I've used linen before. It's canvas before. It's a natural fiber. I haven't had any problems, but I don't know if the chemicals in the paint or the linseed oil will deteriorate that material. I have painted the back of canvas and linen with acrylic. Acrylic is like really stable, and that's plastic. And I know, and that ain't going anywhere. And that probably would stabilize that linen, give it more strength. So I'm sorry, I don't totally know the answer to the oil. I know that tons of people use linen and tons of people paint on it in this way, but I don't have direct experience with just from my own experience. So, okay, the next question's from Barbara.
I want to respond to the last episode of your podcast on finishing, and it is this resistance to finishing. I'm getting how I avoid and resist being here and saying this is me now, and then letting it, and absolutely I go through the full on detail of how many ways can I make this better. But it's like, it's not about working faster. It's about really, like you say, owning what I'm doing and what I'm able to do now. Know that that's going to feed the next thing. It's huge. And I just love you so much. I've done your CVP twice now, and it's really, really benefited me.
So good. I mean, do you ever feel like you're actually, the whole point is to learn the things that are super hard for you, like this thing about finishing or feeling worthy or feeling that you're okay, that you're actually okay, that maybe you're just absolutely so good and your work doesn't have to be amazing or whatever the things are. I mean, I don't want to go into it here, but my journey's been just like, the hardest thing for me is this, and then I get that, and I have to learn it. Like that's what we're doing here. We're learning how to do the hard things, and it just sounds so perfect that you're making art and you're learning how to finish something and how to put it out in the world and go, this is enough and this is good, and yes, I'm going to get better. But this is okay right here, right now. And to be okay with that. That's a huge thing for so many of us. I mean, you are not alone. I think of these dumb races I used to do a lot, running races. And I'm not, I got into running. I wasn't like an athlete in high school or anything. And I got into running kind of late in the game. And I would go and do these races, these little 4 or 5 mile races with this club that I was a part of. And I'd do pretty horrible. I mean, I would be back of the pack, last third or whatever, but relative, you know who you can beat and who you can't. And some days were better than other. And there was something about it that was really helpful because I cared a lot when I was younger about my performance. And there was this thing. So later I was doing these competitions and I learned to like try really hard, but not to worry about it. It was like purifying for me to do these dumb races all the time. And sometimes it would work and like I would have a good one. And other times I would have really just be at the back, but it was something I had to learn. And that's what I was like to really not care how I did, to try really hard and then be able to let it go. And I relate to what you're saying with this painting thing, because it's just like the way I framed it is like, well, that was as good as I could do on Wednesday, and now Wednesday's over. Thursday's coming, you've got some amazing work that's coming. Don't worry about it. It's the next one. You're just in a process and you just keep going to the next one and the next one and the next one. And pretty soon you're going to look back and like I do, I look back at work I did 1.5 years ago and I can't believe I even posted it on Instagram. It's like, God, that's just the worst. And that's how I'll feel about what I'm making now. So you never really actually arrive, but if you have all this anxiety about being in the present, this is all you got. And so try to just, it sounds like you're really getting there. It sounds like you're really like making headway on this, because it's a folly. You will end up not enjoying any of this time. And so savor this time, be present with it, and throw that over your shoulder, that picture, and then go to the next one and throw the next one over your shoulder. And behind you, there'll be this long trail of work, and people will be back there looking at it, but that's not for you. You just keep looking at what you're making, focus on what's exciting, and then grab the next one. That's how I approach it. And I think we want to be free. We want to feel free and be able to be in this in a way that we can keep going, that it's sustainable. So we get to figure this out. We get to find out more and more and more who we're becoming. On September 20th, save this date, we'll be releasing the 100th podcast, the 100th episode of the Art2Life podcast. We have some really special things. It's going to be a long episode. It's going to be really cool. I'm not going to tell you a lot about it. The theme, though, is about emerging, and it's all about what this thing is doing, what it's become. We're going to be looking back on some of the key lessons, the first 100 episodes, and looking forward to what's coming. And so in preparation for this episode, we're going to do a cool thing. If any of you guys want to leave a comment, if you go to art2life.com under podcasts, there's a little yellow bar on the far right side that says leave a question or a comment for Nick. You can click on that and you can record a thing. And tell me about an episode or a part of something that really moved you, that really helped you, that really inspired you. If you can do that, you have until September 1st to do that. All the folks that leave a comment, we're going to choose one person, and we've got a pretty killer prize, 100th anniversary prize, that if you leave a comment and it's chosen random out of a hat, we're going to send this to you. It doesn't matter where you are in the world. So I'm pretty proud of the fact that you guys have helped create this and you've supported me doing this. And it's been such a learning thing for me. Thanks, you guys. And listen, if you love this episode, please leave a rating. That would be so great. We read all of them, and it helps with the logarithms. It's crazy. But also, if you could share this with a friend, that would be really, really super. You guys, I will see you real soon on the next Art2Life podcast. Really, thanks so much for being here. Okay,